Okay, moving on. Sean Mahar. Okay, Sean, you've got 3 minutes starting now.
Thanks. Good morning. I wanted to speak briefly to the question that the Mayor and the Social Development Chair and the Budget Chief have raised all day. If we disagree with the proposals on the table, they asked what would we recommend. So let me make a list. First, don't go around saying you can easily eliminate oodles of wasted tax money if you actually haven't identified any of that waste. And certainly when you spend $3 million on consultants to find that waste and they can't find any cuts more attractive than daycare and libraries, admit you were wrong and that easy cuts aren't the answer. Second, if you make an election pledge not to cut public services, don't cut them. Keep that promise. And if you poll 13,000 residents and they say unequivocally that they want to keep those services, listen to them. And if you really think the city is headed towards a critical structural deficit, don't capriciously wipe out valuable revenue tools like a vehicle registration fee, and don't be the only city in the region that refuses to keep the mill rate at the level of inflation. And if you do decide to figure out how to reduce the city's structural deficit, know your numbers. To predict a $775 million deficit, you have to ignore a lot of facts about the budget, like the $80 million left in the reserve from the 2010 budget surplus, and the fact that the non-program revenue predictions for 2011 are $250 million less than was actually earned in 2010, and you've underestimated the revenues for 2012 by a similar amount. How can we have a meaningful discussion about budget needs when there are literally hundreds of millions of dollars unaccounted for? And if you really want to find long-term solutions, don't try to get there by short-term cuts. Read the study that came out yesterday that shows that there are tens of millions of dollars to be made by helping people who are eligible for ODSP get it so that they don't have to depend on the city's shelters and community services. Read the studies that show... Thank you. Read the studies that show that investing in recreation saves cities money by helping residents lead successful, healthy lives and reducing their dependence on welfare and community services. Invest in social housing and community services and community grants to reduce the cost of policing, hostels, and welfare. Save money by fixing problems and reducing the need for city services rather than just cutting city services and leaving those needs to grow. And while you're at it, contract in commercial garbage collection and benefit from the revenue stream that creates. The best suggestion I can give you is that if you want to fix a complex problem, have a clear plan based on real facts and full analysis, instead of rushing into simplistic answers based on ideology and guesswork without any time for consideration. I think that would help, Mr. Mayor, and I think we're all looking forward to hearing your plan. Thank you.
Sir, Councillor Perks and Councillor Davis have a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So if I was listening, we take the remaining surplus from 2010, we project our non-program revenue like the land transfer tax and our assessment growth for this year and next year at the same level as we got.
Sure. Yeah, we can even pretend that property values aren't going up and we aren't building more property all the time. We can just leave it at 2010 levels, and there's $250 million more right there.
And then another 250 or so for 12 that we could project?
Let's be tough on ourselves and say maybe it'll dip a little in 2012. And so we only get maybe $480 million out of the combination.
So if we do that, plus the other thing, then we're below $300 million in shortfall, not above 700.
We'd
now,
be about.
Can I ask you, if we hadn't cut the vehicle registration fee and frozen taxes last year at a cost of $120 million this year and $100 million off our base next year, would we be almost balanced with a very small tax increase?
We'd have the least challenging deficit we've seen in almost a decade.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
And sorry, Councillor Perks, I think I still have a bit of my minute, and I'll add that we probably wouldn't have to cut anything.
Sir, you used up your whole minute. It's Councillor Davis. You have a minute. I'll start it over again. Okay, go ahead.
So do you think that we ought to have the results of the efficiency studies before we make decisions?
I think we actually should do two things. One is we should have the results of those efficiency studies, but the other is that we should not look at everything as if we have to cut our way to success. Sometimes even businesses invest to earn more, and cities can do that too.
Do you think that we ought to have our accurate revenue projections? We ought to have looked at other revenue options. We ought to have looked at impact studies. We ought to have not exited thousands of people out the door before we know what they're going to do?
I think that would be a reasonable strategy for managing a large budget.
And do you think we ought to have all that information together before we made decisions?
I think that you should have all that information together, and then you should look at it over an extended period of time before you make those decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Okay, going down the list here, 318, Lynn Jamel or Gemel? Lynn Jamel or Gemel? Is that Lynn? No? No Lynn? Okay. Joe Katzel? John Katzel? No. Jeanette Thibault, her name came up before somewhere I saw. Janet Thibault?
Yep, I am.
Didn't she? Oh, okay. I don't know, I saw your name twice on the list. Oh, well, okay. Go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Janet Thibault. At the age of 7, my family came to Toronto. My parents and thus my family were working poor. I've used many of the city services that we were talking about as I grew up. I went to public school. I had public dental care. I learned to swim and skate in community pools. I used the TTC to go to York University and the Blue Line to get home from my late-night part-time job. I used the public library where one of the librarians introduced me not only to a love of learning, but to what would become a vocation, which is early childhood education. As a young mom, I used the New Mothers program that used to be offered by the Public Health Department. And those moms and I, later in Bloor West Village, used a small startup fund from the City of Toronto to start a parent-run drop-in center. My children have used many of those same services, although today they look very different. I'm a tax-paying Torontonian. I'm a unionized childcare teacher. I work in a community-based sector. I'm proud to say that I make a decent wage. I can support myself and my children. I own a home. I pay property taxes. I even paid the car taxes that you imposed and then later took away. I was happy to do that, knowing that that was part of my contribution to a system that looks after all of our citizens. I'm here to tell you that reviewing services without looking at the financial and human costs is not right. It was not what you were elected to do. Looking only at cost cutting and not at revenue generating is clearly ideological, and no one believes that it's fair or an evaluation of the services that the city provides. I and many of the people that were here today to speak could only speak for 3 minutes, but we could probably speak on 3 minutes of the aspects of each and every cut and service that the city provides. Libraries, the X, childcare, transit, bike lanes, these are all vital services that we offer myself, my children, and many of the residents. As a voter, I consider free market fundamentalism to be dangerous and divorced from reality, ethics, and rational debate, and many other forms, just as other forms of fundamentalism. People in need of care, whether it's childcare, health care, aged care, counseling, or are not merely consumers. Care is about human relationships. It's personal. It's about how we express ourselves in a community. Privatizing services is a threat to the whole concept of a civil society and community action. The KPMG consultants lacked an understanding of human suffering, human need, and human responsibilities. They had no way of calculating it, so they ignored it in their report. I certainly hope that you don't do that. The very least, I hope, is that you will do an equity and health assessment of those recommendations. I hope that Mayor Ford keeps the promise he made and doesn't cut public services.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, Sean Davidson. Sean Davidson. Shirley Ramsey. Shirley Ramsey. Manu Sarna. Manu Sarna. Paulette Andre Hamilton.
It's Paulette Andrea Hamilton.
Andrea, sorry, okay.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Paulette Andrea Hamilton. I am a tax-paying citizen who does work and took time off to come and speak on KPMG's consultation to cut or close public libraries that all citizens use. This service for everything like ESL, cooling centers, computer technology access, art and music, books and socialization, and after-school programs. I say to the executive committee, cut your salaries first before cutting the money coming to the libraries. Yes, increase my taxes as long as you use it to increase services for all citizens in Scarborough, York, East York, and beyond. Yes, bring back the vehicle registration tax because if you can afford a car, you can afford the costs that go with it. The fact is, the gravy train is not public core services, but costly consulting companies who came up with no solutions. To all executive committee members and councillors, please go visit the public services that were on KPMG's report before you cut. Meaning, go to the public library where you live, community centers, and such, either by TTC, car, bike, or walk. Then say the services need to be cut. I do believe that a crisis is being pushed on the people to justify a privatization culture and agenda and mindset at this council. Public service means for all public citizens. I will be voting in 3 years, and like an elephant, I remember which executive committee member cut my public service and will make sure that you are held accountable for it. I worked at the city election as a clerk that helped all these citizens to help vote you all in. And when their local library, community center, and public service is gone, they will remember that you, Mr. Ford, and you, Mr. Mamalini, and any other executive committees, you, yes men, are on the executive committee, will not be back in 3 years.
George, you can help people vote? You can help people vote? Interesting.
Yes, I was helping people to vote. I helped people to vote you in. I helped people to vote in Rob Ford. I actually helped all those people. It's not illegal.
It is illegal. You can't help people vote. It's illegal.
I worked as a city clerk.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you.